My name is Victoria, and I once thought I had the ideal life. I was a bright, cheerful, and optimistic girl who believed that happiness came naturally. My world was filled with admiration for my father's success and everything I could possibly desire. But one night changed everything, shattering my perception of life itself. My entire world turned upside down in an instant, upending everything I believed in and trusted. If you enjoy hearing fascinating true stories like this, please subscribe to my channel and watch the video to the end. Don't forget to click the like button to show your support. It really helps me keep sharing these powerful stories, and believe me, this is one you don't want to miss. That night would haunt me forever. It was the night my sense of comfort and trust in those closest to me crumbled. It marked the beginning of a dark chapter in my life. I learned the painful truth that not everyone who smiles at you is a friend, and not everyone who says they care truly has your best interests at heart. My father Nathan, is a wealthy and incredibly successful man, a business magnate who built his empire from the ground up after my mother passed away when I was young, leaving me without her love and guidance. My father never remarried. He poured everything into raising me, but even his love and protection couldn't shield me from what happened that fateful night. Instead, he poured all of his love into me, his only daughter. He held me in high regard, viewing me as his pride and delight. He may have been busy, constantly caught up in his work, but he always made sure I felt cherished and important. We resided in New York, a city brimming with lights, ambition, and limitless possibilities. Even in the midst of all the excitement, I never truly understood where my father's heart was. It wasn't in one particular house, or he would point to the skyscrapers and luxurious homes around the city, saying, "I have one of those," or "I own several properties in this area." I often wondered how much money he really had to afford all of this. Who would be able to live such a lavish lifestyle? It was both impressive and overwhelming to see his success. Nathan had gathered a large group of powerful friends. These were not just acquaintances. They were major players in the industry. Whether it was at grand parties, exclusive events, or important conferences, my father consistently received invitations from these world-influential individuals and leaders, and I frequently accompanied him, a proud daughter walking hand in hand with her successful father. I became accustomed to these events, to the compliments, the glances, and the way people admired my father. But there was one person in particular who stood out among my father's friends. His name was Andrew, and according to my father, he was more than just a friend. He was family. Andrew and my father had known each other since college, having gone through difficult years together. They started their business journeys together, and their bond grew stronger over the years. Andrew was the one person my father trusted unconditionally. My father would often say, with Andrew, "I feel like I have another brother." It was these words, this deep connection, that made me admire their friendship and trust Andrew, as a member of our family at these grand gatherings, would often be together with my father, laughing and reminiscing about the old days and celebrating their success. I would watch them with admiration, seeing their relationship as something rare and special. Andrew was always well-spoken and charismatic, and made everyone feel comfortable around him. He had an aura of trustworthiness and kindness that made him simple to talk to. To me, he was like an uncle, a family friend with whom I could freely talk, share my thoughts, and seek advice. But little did I know that the man who had earned my complete trust, the man I considered family, was hiding a dark side that would destroy everything I valued. Andrew consistently demonstrated politeness and charm, leaving me with no reason to question his actions. He acted as a father figure, affirming my intelligence, beauty, and accomplishments. I admired him as a mentor, as someone who always had a kind word and offered guidance. But the more time I spent with him, the more I noticed something that didn't sit right with me. It was a look in his eyes, a fleeting yet unsettling gaze that left me with an uncomfortable feeling, a look that made my skin crawl whenever I remembered it. But I ignored it. I convinced myself that it was just my imagination. The night that everything changed seemed like a regular evening, one that should have been no different from any other event I had attended with my father. It was an elegant, high-profile party at a prestigious hotel where my father was the keynote speaker. He had worked for weeks preparing his speech, and as usual, I accompanied him to the event. While my father engaged in crucial business discussions, I strolled around the venue, soaking in the grand atmosphere of the party in a room brimming with excitement and energy. Although I felt a little out of place, I quickly grew accustomed to it. Andrew soon made his appearance. He greeted me with his usual friendly smile, asking me how I was doing and making small talk about my life and my studies. As always, he greeted me with his usual friendly smile, asking me how I was doing and making small talk about my life and He praised my radiant appearance in the dress my father had gifted me. I smiled back, flattered. Thinking he was just being a kind, caring family friend, he asked how everything was going and what my plans were for He seemed genuinely interested, and I felt reassured by his kindness. Did I realize that our brief conversation was about to shatter my trust in him? I excused myself to find the bathroom. I had been walking around for a while, and I needed a break. But as I made my way through the hotel's massive hallways, I suddenly realized that I had no idea where the bathroom was. The hotel was so large, and the hallways seemed to stretch on endlessly. I stood there, confused, trying to figure out which direction to go. That's when Andrew appeared again. Suddenly, he appeared, smiled warmly, and offered to assist me in finding the restroom. He described the location as vast and prone to confusion. I continued to trust him, agree with him, and blindly follow him. I had no reason to doubt him because he was family. As we strolled along the expansive, brightly lit hallways, Andrew gestured towards a door and clarified that it was the restroom. I entered the bathroom, relieved, but as I was about to close the door, I heard hurried footsteps. Before I could react, Andrew had followed me inside, swiftly locking the door behind us. The sound of the lock clicking into place echoed throughout the small space, and I froze in fear. In that moment, I knew something was very wrong. Andrew was no longer the friendly, trustworthy man. Andrew's eyes, which I knew were cold, calculating, and filled with an intensity I'd never seen before, had replaced the warm smile he usually wore with a sinister grin that sent shivers down my spine. "What are you doing now?" I inquired, my voice trembling. I tried to remain calm in the face of fear, but my shaking hands betrayed it. He did not respond. Instead, he moved closer, his gaze never leaving mine. I backed away. However, the bathroom's limited size left me with no escape. My back collided with the wall, leaving me feeling trapped. I felt a surge of panic when I realized there was no escape. The locked door behind me left me utterly alone with Andrew. "Please let me go," I pleaded, trying to remain calm. "This is a bathroom. You don't have to do this." But he simply smiled a cold, terrifying smile. "Do not be afraid," he said. He spoke softly, his voice low and sinister, saying, "I just want to talk like we used to." I could feel the air in the room becoming thick with tension, and I knew I needed to leave, but I couldn't. Andrew was too close, and I could feel his strength as he rested his hand on my shoulder. I recoiled in fear, trying to push him away, but his grip tightened, and Ed and I realized we had no way out. "Let me go, Andrew." "You cannot do this," I cried, my voice desperate. "Nobody can hear us," he said. His voice was cold and defiant. It was just you and me here. The realization of my entrapment and the absence of anyone to listen to my screams filled me with terror. I tried to fight back and push him away with all my strength, but I was no match. Andrew was stronger, and he was soon on top of me. He held me down and easily overpowered me. There was no hope after struggling and screaming for what seemed like an eternity. The music and laughter from the party outside drowned out everything else. I felt alone, helpless, and terrified. After what felt like hours, I was finally free of Andrew's grip. The door suddenly opened, letting in light from the hallway, and my father's concerned voice. "Victoria, where are you?" "You, my father," yelled, rushing in with several others when he saw me trembling and weak on the floor, his face drained of color. The pain in his eyes was unbearable, and he raced to my side. "Victoria, I'm so sorry," he whispered, pulling me into his arms and holding me close as if to protect me from everything. "I couldn't protect you." I felt his arms around me, his trembling hands, but I was unable to respond. I was numb and frozen. The world around me was spinning, and my father turned to face Andrew, who stood motionless in the corner. Andrew's face was ashen and filled with fear. As the reality of what he had done dawned on him, there was a brief pause before Nathan let go of me, his rage erupting. He charged at Andrew, fists clenched with rage. "How could you do this to my daughter?" he shouted. In an instant, my father delivered the first punch to Andrew, knocking him back. Andrew stumbled, but my father did not stop. He pummeled him with punch after punch, each one seeming to release a lifetime of pain and betrayal. The room erupted in chaos as people attempted to stop my father, but no one dared to approach. I sat frozen, unable to move as I witnessed the scene unfold in front of me. Every punch my father landed felt like it was delivering the justice I had hoped for, but I also felt detached. My face was blank and my body numb. I was watching, almost in a trance as my father fought back against the man who had ruined everything. He eventually arrived safely. He managed to bring the chaos under control. My father paused, his hands trembling with rage. I couldn't believe what had just happened. My mind was in a daze, and all I could think about was how the nightmare was finally over. But it wasn't over for me when I passed out. Everything went dark. The sterile scent of antiseptic and the harsh white light above me greeted me as I awoke, not sure how much time had passed. I blinked a few times, trying to adjust to the bright ceiling. My body felt weak, and every inch of me ached as if I had been through a hurricane. The panic, fear, and pain of the night before returned in waves, overwhelming my mind. I couldn't breathe. I began to cry uncontrollably, my sobs shaking my fragile body as I tried to move. Every muscle in my body felt stiff and sore, as if it had been under strain for too long. The pain was unbearable, and my thoughts scattered, trying to piece together the horrific events that had unfolded. The sensation of Andrew's hands and the terror of the situation all returned to me. Every time the door opened, I jumped in fear, my heart racing. I felt a gentle hand on mine and looked up to see Nathan. Sitting beside me, his face pale and pained, his eyes red and swollen from crying. It broke my heart to see him in such agony. My father, who had consistently shielded me, had now crumbled. He was crying. I could see tears. "Victoria, I'm so sorry for falling onto his hand while he held mine tightly," he whispered. "I apologize for not being able to protect you," he said in an emotional tone. I looked at him, my lips trembling, but I couldn't say anything. My emotions were too overwhelming. My chest tightened, and I wanted to tell him everything was fine, but I couldn't because my throat felt tight. The guilt, the pain, everything I had gone through weighed heavily on me, and I couldn't find words. Nathan refused to let go of my hand. He sat beside me, his presence a source of comfort despite the pain I could see in his face. I could tell how much he blamed himself, and as much as I wanted to reassure him, to tell him that he had done everything he could, I couldn't muster the courage to speak. All I wanted was for the world to quiet down so the pain would stop, but it didn't. Memories were too fresh and vivid. The following days passed in a blur. Medical professionals surrounded me, providing care, but it felt like I was living in a fog. Every time I closed my eyes, the events of that night replayed in my mind, dragging me back to the darkness I wanted to escape. Despite his own grief and pain, my father never abandoned me. He sat by me, watching over me, not giving up his love and determination, which became the lifeline I clung to. He fought for me, not just physically, but emotionally. I could see it in his eyes. He was determined to make sure Andrew would never be able to hurt anyone again after I had recovered enough to leave the hospital. Immediately, my father took charge, ensuring the preservation of all the evidence, including my medical records, the details of my testimony, and all the tools we could use to bring Andrew to justice. He wasted no time. He reported everything to the police, initiating a legal process that would not only seek justice for me, but would ensure that Andrew would never again harm another person. Unyielding, my father hired a top-tier team of lawyers, used his connections, and ensured that no stone remained unturned. Andrew, despite his attempts to defend himself, could not escape the truth. He tried to argue that it was a misunderstanding, even going as far as to blame me for what happened, but the evidence was irrefutable. The testimonies, the medical reports, the witness statements from the party clearly depicted the horror that transpired that night, marking the beginning of the legal journey. The court proceedings were long and exhausting, but my father's resolve only grew stronger. He stayed by me, offering his strength as I recounted every painful detail of the night. It was difficult to relive the horror repeatedly, but I knew it was necessary. I needed to do this not only for myself, but also for others who might face the same danger in the future. Weeks of anticipation culminated in the announcement of the verdict. The judge's gavel fell, signaling the end of the trial, and sentenced Andrew to 15 years in prison. I felt a rush of relief wash over me. Andrew was no longer a threat. He would never be able to hurt anyone again. As I sat beside my father in the courtroom, his hand firmly gripping mine, it dawned on me that this victory was not solely for me, but also for every survivor who had faced silence and lacked the courage to speak up. I had discovered my voice, and with it, I successfully brought Andrew to justice. As the officers led Andrew away in handcuffs, I felt a strange sense of closure. The nightmare was behind me. He never stopped fighting for me, offering his support, love, and unwavering belief in my strength, and I gradually began to heal. Ultimately, justice prevailed, and I mustered the courage to proceed. Yet my journey towards healing was far from complete. I realize now that the scars on my heart would take time to heal, but I also knew that I didn't have to bear them alone. My father was by my side, and we would face whatever came next together. My story is more than a tale. My story of trauma serves as a reminder that silence is never the solution to injustice. We must act, speak up, and not let fear control us when faced with pain and suffering. We must seek justice, not only for ourselves, but also for others. And I'd like to share this lesson with anyone who is suffering in silence. Facing an injustice they feel unable to speak about. If you are hurting or suffering, I encourage you to speak up. Reach out to people you trust, whether they're family, friends, or professionals. You're not alone. There are people who are willing to help you. Speaking up not only frees you from facing challenges alone, but also creates an opportunity for justice to prevail. Don't let your fear of silence keep you in a powerless situation. You are stronger than you realize. Recognize that you have the ability to heal. The road to recovery could be long. It is difficult, but each step brings you closer to peace and wholeness. Forgive yourself. Believe in your abilities. You have the strength to overcome, and never let your past pain define who you are. My experience has taught me that standing up for what is right is about protecting others and preventing others from suffering the same pain. My story is one of perseverance and bravery, and the power of speaking out. By sharing my story, I hope to inspire others to confront their fears, seek justice, and overcome whatever obstacles stand in their way. You deserve to be happy, at peace, and have a future free of pain and fear. Always believe in yourself, and remember that even in the darkest times, light will find its way back to you. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to hear my story today. It is more than just a story. It is a message of hope and strength. I hope this story has touched your heart, inspired you, and reminded you that no matter how difficult the road may seem, there is always hope waiting at the end. If this story resonated with you, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel so you can stay connected to more stories like this one. Until next time, I wish you peace, joy, and the strength to keep moving forward.